Welcome to the Germany Experience, the podcast about life in Germany as seen through the eyes of outsiders. I'm your host, Sean. And if you want to have some discussions about the podcast or just life in general in Germany, join the Facebook group, The Germany Experience. And you can also go to thegermanyexperience.de for all kinds of information about this podcast. Now, this week, I continue with the rerun of episodes from 2019. And this interview that you'll hear today aired in October, and it was episode 20 of the Germany Experience. Back then, the podcast was still called Expat Life Germany, and it was with Nicole, host of the Expat Cast. And if you've listened to the show, you'll know that I repeatedly in the past referred to her as my rival. But the fact is, she couldn't have been nicer. When I reached out to her for the first time when I was starting my podcast, and I realized that she has a very similar podcast out there, she was very open and was willing to share tips. And yeah, like I said, not very rivalrous of her. At any rate, we decided that I would come on her show, and then later on, a few months later, she came on my show. And this is the interview that we had. It's lots of fun, and we discuss German stereotypes and whether we think they're true or not. And we get into all of the things that you're used to hearing about Germans, and we decide what we think of them. Take a listen to the episode. It's Nicole from the Expat Cast. This week's guest is my sworn rival, the host of another expat podcast in Germany. It's called the Expat Cast, and her name is Nicole Palazzo, and she's from the United States. Welcome to the show, Nicole.
Thank you very much.
Now, before we start, can you give me a really quick overview of where you're from and why you're in Germany?
As you said, I'm from the U.S. I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which used to be the capital of the United States, but no one in Germany knows that. They only know it if I sing the Philadelphia cream cheese theme song. So I'm from Philadelphia.
Right, there you go.
Right. And then I lived a couple places in the U.S. before moving to Freiburg, Germany, about 2 years ago.
Okay, so Nicole, I thought since you've been in Germany for long enough now to understand more of the culture and you live with a German, you might be a perfect candidate for something I've been wanting to do on the show, and that is to go through some of the common cultural stereotypes and myths about Germans. And I was thinking we could do a kind of a Mythbusters thing. Here's what I'm thinking. We go through some stereotypes that I've seen pop up regularly in YouTube videos or in blog posts or that you've heard of, and then we're going to try and confirm the stereotypes as being true, or we're going to bust the stereotype.
Sounds good.
And you've got some prepared. I got some prepared. So let's see what we got. Okay. So of course, before we do this, we got to put out a caveat that these are generalizations, of course.
For sure. But, yeah. And yeah, I'm only 2 years in, and I've only lived in one little corner of Germany, and I've also not even traveled very far within Germany. So I definitely take mine with a grain of salt. I might just be talking about Southern Germans.
Yeah. So there are your caveats, folks. So I'll kick us off. I'll kick us off with one of them that I think people associate with Germany the most is the fact that Germans are supposed to be very efficient. So what do you think, Nicole? Germans are efficient? Are they?
I think in a way that they are. Yeah, I think a lot of ways they are. One of the reasons that I was a little hesitant to be like, no, it's totally true, is because their decision-making process is sometimes very lengthy in a way that I find inefficient. But I also suppose in the long run, what they're trying to do, like their approach to decision-making is to talk about every possible way that it could turn, good or bad, and what would you do in that scenario. And in that process then takes so long that to me, I'm sitting there like, oh my God, let's just do something. This is really inefficient. But at the end of the day, maybe it does prepare you more for the what ifs. And then you don't have to invest as much time in the future when those things happen because you're prepared and you can just do the thing. But that's really the only example that came to my mind where I was like, oh, that's super inefficient. A lot of the other ways they are very efficient, like the grocery store line, of course.
Yeah, that's the thing. For me, that's a lot of what I was thinking of from my perspective as well. I think Germans are very efficient. They definitely have, I think it comes also down to all their rules that they have. It's kind of, some of it is to make them more efficient as well. It's just everything is geared towards not wasting any time. But sometimes I find this quite difficult as well, because sometimes I think that they're way too efficient. But yeah, I would say that's it's confirmed from my side. So that's confirmed from you as well.
Definitely. Oh, another example of, though, how it might not be confirmed is bureaucracy. However, I would argue that all bureaucracy is inefficient. So
yeah, that's actually a very good point. That is, for such an efficient culture, the bureaucracy is quite surprising, because there is a lot of extra fat around those processes that
definitely
maybe don't need to be there, or things, and also things that they could have cleaned up years ago. You think, wow, we're still doing this paper based and we're not doing this electronically yet, or something like that. So I think you're right there. I think the bureaucracy might indicate that it's not confirmed.
Mostly confirmed.
Okay, so we can hit the Germans are very efficient as mostly confirmed. I'm happy with that.
All right, cool. I'll hit us with the next one.
Yeah.
They are said to be very punctual. What do you think?
Yeah.
Just straight up, yeah.
I think so. I think that they do value time. I come from South Africa, and their time is a little more relaxed. So if you invite someone to a party, you don't expect to see them at the time that you invite them, really, which is kind of strange. But it definitely is weird that they show up exactly on the time that they're supposed to show up. But it's obviously not in all situations. I would say in a workplace, they're very punctual. But I've also noticed that it varies. It varies from social situation and so on. But mostly, yes, that's a yes from me. What are your thoughts?
I think, especially as a foreigner, I find them exceptionally punctual. I think in their own eyes, sometimes they're like, oh, no, we're not. And they'll talk about, delayed buses or trains. But to me, even those delayed buses and trains are still pretty punctual. Like, I was recently in Italy and the train showed up like 12 minutes late without any announcement or anything. They just were like, it's close enough to on time. Whereas in Germany, if it's 3 minutes late, there's an announcement and everyone's really upset that it's running late. But that just shows me like their standards are just so much higher than my own. So I definitely think they are very punctual.
Yes, that is true, and the example with the trains as well. But I think the stereotype about Germany is that the trains run on time. That is not true. Just as a general thing, but the expectation that the Germans have, exactly like I say, when it's 3 minutes later, everyone's freaking out and going, "Where's this train? Where's this train?" And they're making announcements, and so it's a good point. All right, so that's confirmed. Germans are punctual.
Yes.
So there seems to be something to these stereotypes, these cliches. All right, my next one is Germans don't have a sense of humor. Is this true, Nicole?
Doch. I think they do. It's just very strange and specific, and you kind of have to be pretty fluent in German to get it a lot of the times. I don't even know how I would describe the humor, though. Some of them do have pretty dark humor. They don't really have the sense of humor that I'm used to, of like irony and sarcasm, but they have their own way that goes in that direction. I don't know how to describe it very well, though. What do you think?
Exactly. I think you're describing it very well, because that's also very much my opinion of Germans' sense of humor. You said that their humor can be very dark. That is very much something that I've found. They have a very irreverent sense of humor, and quite often they also enjoy not being politically correct when they're being funny.
Yeah.
So it can be very dark and it's very irreverent, and I actually like it a lot. But I agree 100% with what you say as well. It's a bit different to what I'm used to, also in a very similar way that you mentioned, because I love self-deprecating humor. I don't know why. It's just, I think that's something that we South Africans do, and I know that Americans and British people do it quite a lot as well. And sarcasm and irony. I often make a sarcastic comment, and Germans will completely overanalyze that comment. And I was like, guys, that was a joke. And they'd be like, why would you say that, though? I wish I could think of a good example of when this happened, but that's pretty much that's pretty much my experience of it.
So I've been doing this a lot recently, where at work, something will go wrong. A computer's broken and there's a giant line and 5 people are calling on the phone. And my coworker turns to me and it's like, oh, this is the situation. Oh, geez. And I go, oh, great. Super. And to me, it's just kind of like, oh, super. It's super sarcastic. It's a way of like forcing optimism almost, but not really. And they always look at me like, oh, but it's not super. Did you not hear? The computer's broken and people are calling on the phone. And I'm like, no. I get that it's not super. It's never mind. I don't even know how I could explain why I think it's
Just
funny to say that it's super, because it doesn't, it's just a cultural thing, I think. So I couldn't really back up my joke, but that kind of thing doesn't work with them. I'm glad you mentioned the political correctness thing, or in their case, political incorrectness, because one time I was with a German rugby team at the pub, and they were, having drinks and maybe making some offhanded comments that were politically incorrect. And a friend of mine who was also there is very strongly liberal and really, doesn't like to stand up for even anyone in the vicinity saying something that she would say is flawed morally. And so to me, I was like, I understand that this level of humor, that they don't actually really mean it. It's just to them funny somehow. But she's not fluent in German. And so the miscommunication was just spiraling. And then it became this whole conversation about all sorts of social topics like feminism and racism and all this stuff. And these, at a pub of all places, it just, I was watching this culture clash play out in front of me, and I didn't know how to explain to either side, like why for her, as she's also American, this form of humor is really uncomfortable, and why for them it was sort of normal and okay. Though I guess you could, I don't know, I guess you could debate if that's okay or not. But I think to me, I'm like, they're different social contexts, and I think it's both are valid. But were not, they just clashed, just grew and grew.
I think what often happens with what might seem as political incorrectness is that they're actually making a comment about the thing that they're making a joke about. And it comes across as politically incorrect, but actually there's a layer behind it that they're trying to get at, as to say, look, this is a real issue. So by me taking the part of someone who has been this political incorrectness, it's kind of like they're playing on a different, on two different levels there, I think. Or maybe we're just giving them way too much latitude when it comes to it. But I kind of get it. I
will say their type of humor doesn't lend itself super well to stand-up comedy.
No. I've tried. I don't know if you've ever seen when it's Fasching time, and Fasching time in Germany is the carnival time. They have a whole spate of stand-up comedians and comedy, and I use that word very, very loosely, specials on TV that you can tune in and watch, and it is terrible. It is just, I'm sorry, Germany, and I'm sorry, Germans that might love that stuff. It is horrible.
Well, but then they love like so much physical comedy, and they're obsessed with, what is it, Dinner for One, which is kind of funny in its own way, but not to the extent that they seem to think it is.
They think it is hilarious, and they quote it, which is one of the strangest things I found about moving to Germany, is they're quoting. For those who don't know, Dinner for One is, I guess, how old? 50s, 60s, maybe even older.
Gosh, something like that. Yeah.
It is a 50s, let's say that era, black and white comedy sketch that lasts about 20 minutes of a woman and her butler takes the part of her deceased friends, and she celebrates New Year's Eve every year. The Germans love this, and they show it every New Year's Eve in Germany. So that was something that very much surprised me, and they quote it anytime. So anytime someone says like, same procedure as the last time, and same procedures every year. So I'm like, what?
Yep. And the boot, I don't think you mentioned this, it's British.
It's British.
They play it in English. They do not dub it anything.
It's like bizarre. The only thing on TV that's not dubbed.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a thing of beauty. So I guess what we were saying about this one, Nicole, is Germans do have a sense of humor. It's just maybe not like we're used to. I think you summed it up pretty well at the beginning. So this one is busted. Yeah.
Busted. The next one I had is that they're very direct.
Yes, I think that is just a straight up confirm for me. They are very direct. They have a way of saying things that you would never, as a South African in my culture, you would never say to someone else without a lot of preparation or whatever. So if there's something that's going on, they will be very straightforward and tell you exactly their opinion about it. And I that's a confirm for me. What do you think, Nicole?
I also want to say straight up confirmed, though I have observed that there are some lower level issues that haven't quite elevated themselves to a thing where they think they should address it, where they can be a little bit, not passive aggressive quite, but a little, they'll still say things directly, but the words they're saying are getting at the issue indirectly.
Right.
where they'll say something like, oh geez, I don't know, like, oh, do you not like this food because you're not eating that much of it? And that's like a weird question. What they actually really want is you to compliment their food. But instead of, asking for something like that so upfront, they would say more in this sort of, it's still pretty aggressive, it's still pretty upfront, but it's a little bit more indirect / direct, if that makes any sense.
I have also experienced that, where they will ask a question that is, like you say, getting at another issue and not actually coming out and saying it. And so there's two sides to that then, is what you're saying. We have the direct thing where they'll tell you you've got something stuck between your teeth, or they'll tell you that the way that you did something was not good. But then there's another one where they've got a point that they want to make, and they won't be direct about it, but they will ask you kind of all kinds of questions around the issue to kind of broach the issue.
Right. And I think, to me, I still want to say I confirm this one, because that to me is a form of being direct, right? They're still speaking to the issue and in a prompt manner. They're not letting it stew. Like, I think this happens to me at work a lot, in the workplace. And in America, in the workplace, if there's a conflict, a lot of people don't say a single thing, or they say something super passive aggressive, or in a social setting, and they let it build for months, and then it comes out later that it's this huge issue. And they're not doing that. They're taking on the issue, but they're, I think, trying to maybe soften or ease themselves into it in a way that does come across as somewhat indirect. But for me, I still would consider that the overall approach direct.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing about Germans as well is that they don't have a problem with confrontations, which sometimes for me makes me squeamish, because I also come from, I guess South Africans are also very non-confrontational generally. Again, very much generalizations. And the Germans don't have, if there's something going on at the workplace, or if they feel someone's not performing according to the way that they feel they should be performing, they have no problems calling that person into a room, and maybe calling some other related people to the issue into the room to discuss it, which is, like you say, I guess that's a good thing to get everything out in the open. But it's also very confrontational sometimes. And I would like, oh my God, can we not do this? Can we just pretend everything's okay?
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. Okay. So we got it confirmed. They are direct, and they're direct in different ways.
Yes.
All right. Another one that I have is Germans love order. So what do you think?
I think they like to have a plan, and they like to know what's coming their way. I think they're not necessarily the most spontaneous people, unless you have planned to be spontaneous, which is the thing that they do.
Yes.
So I think in that sense of order, yes. I think physically, if they're organized with their items, is really person to person. And they're pretty forgiving generally about different people's organization systems. Like, if I have a really messy desk, I don't think I'm going to get too much crap for it, as long as I know where everything is when I need it. So, but I think in this more sort of philosophical approach to life, they do need a bit of order.
I agree. I think this is also where the bureaucracy comes from in some way. In some ways, it's kind of their love for rules and orders and so on. All around, they do love the rules. And I love what you said about them not liking to be, not having to plan to be spontaneous, because that's also something that came up in some interviews that I did with some guests. One was saying that to become a friend, you almost you have to plan. You can't just say, hey, let's go for drinks tonight at 5:00. Are you free for drinks tonight? Or are you free for drinks tomorrow? You kind of have to plan ahead with them. And so I guess that's also part of that love for order.
Right. And if you want to say, oh, where should we go for these drinks? So I feel like it would be a very German thing for them to ask, we're going to meet up for drinks in a week and a half. Where will we go? Right. They want to know this information right at the get-go. But if you say, oh, I don't really know yet, I kind of want to see how the weather is, and then we can decide, that could be okay. They could be like, okay, we will be spontaneous.
Yes. All right. We need
but
to
it
plan
needs to be an explicit. Yeah, exactly.
All right. So they do love order. We're saying they love order. Confirmed.
They sure do.
Confirmed.
Next.
Okay, what you got, Nicole?
Next question is, do they also love bread and beer as much as everyone thinks that they do?
It's difficult for me to say in this case, because I live in Bavaria, and the answer in Bavaria, where I live, is very much yes. They do love bread. They can have bread 3 times a day, and they can have, I think if they were allowed to have bread beer all the time. During the day, they would. And in fact, when we first moved here, my wife's company had beer automaton. So kind of beer auto. What do you call those machines? Like
vending
automats?
machines.
Vending machines. Thank you, Nicole, for helping me with my native tongue. The vending machines, they had beer in the vending machines at her offices. So this was in 2007. So that is not the case anymore, but I think they would still do it if they could. So yeah, they love beer and they love bread as much as everyone thinks that they do.
I would definitely also agree. I only live one state over in the south in Baden-Württemberg, but here it's also, both things are very, very cherished. And actually, so I wrote these sitting beside my German boyfriend, and he said that growing up here, there was a rumor that, there are certain goods that countries stockpile in case that there's some kind of emergency that they need access to supply and feed their people, right? So, canned goods, what have you. He said that growing up, they were told that the German government also stockpiles beer because it's considered this category of foods, this basic things that you need to survive. Beer. He said he has never fact-checked it as an adult, but it's the kind of thing you grow up, like everyone talks about it. It's like a known thing. So that would be really interesting to hear if any of the listeners can confirm or deny that, or if they've also heard this or not. I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, that would be a good thing to hear about. I've heard that it is, I think it's not taxed as an alcohol. It's taxed as a normal foodstuff. But again, this is hearsay. These might be rumors that have been planted by the German government to make us believe this stuff. So it would be good to hear if anyone knows about that. But that's a confirm from both of us.
Definitely.
We can't speak for Northern Germany, but I guess we can assume that it is.
I think so.
Right. This one's a big one, Nicole. This one's a really big one. So the stereotype goes, Germans love socks and sandals.
So they're not opposed to them, which in my book is enough to say that this is an issue.
Yeah, I agree. If you're not against it, you are for it. So
exactly.
Sorry, German.
I like to live in the gray in life, but honestly, I'm black and white about this. And they are open to socks and sandals. So in my book, they love them and it's a problem.
That's enough. Yeah. What I found is that some do. Some Germans definitely do love socks and sandals. I've worked with countless people. I have even some friends in my circle of friends that wear socks and sandals, and I've let them into my friends' circle anyway. But it's sometimes surprising that it's not just the older Germans for me, because I would have thought, okay, the older Germans love socks and sandals, but there are also younger Germans that sort of embrace this. But my favorite thing that I've seen is when expats start embracing this. That's kind of like they come here and they're, what are you doing with the socks and sandals? And I've seen some people after 5 years go, you know what? And then they just join the craze. And I'm like, that is I don't even know what I want to say. That is just unthinkable.
Unreal, unacceptable.
Yeah.
Your visa is promptly revoked.
Yes. Yeah, you're out of here.
This is a bad time to confess that a couple weeks ago, I bought my first pair of Birkenstocks. I'm feeling very eingedeutscht.
Mm-hmm.
I went to take my trash out. I'd been wearing socks and sneakers that day, but I was just going to take the trash out. I didn't want to lace up shoes. So I just slid into my sandals, went outside to the other side of the apartment building, dropped off my trash. Then I thought, hey, it's actually really nice weather. Why don't I walk up the hill and take in some fresh air? And then all of a sudden, 30 minutes later, I look down my feet and I'm like, gosh, darn it. It happened. I was wearing socks and sandals and it was terrible. It was terrible. I feel the need to confess it because I feel terrible about it. And I would not like this to be. Yeah, no, I don't want this to be my future. I don't want this to be my truth.
No, that's how they get you, Nicole. That's how they get you. The good news is it sounds like you're integrating well.
I think in my opinion, there is a certain level of integration that is admirable, and I do not want to go too far. That for me was a moment too far.
I was all on board with your story when you were saying, I just popped out to go take the trash out. Because when you said that, I was like, no, I've done that before. I've had socks on, and then there were only like sandals at the door, so I just put them on and I went outside. But when you then said that your day continued with them on, I was like, okay, that's too far. Sorry, Nicole. That's it.
It was too far. No, it's okay. Call me on it.
And it's
Keep me accountable.
It's good that you just admitted this on a podcast that's going to air and be there forever for people to hear. Anyway.
I'm putting myself out there here today.
Yeah. So German loves socks and sandals. Yep. That's confirmed. All right. So I've got a few more. Germans don't do small talk. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree.
That's confirmed from Nicole.
Oh man, I don't think I can ever forget my first week at my first job in a German environment. We have a coffee break every day, which is partially built in so that people see each other and chat, because a lot of times everyone's sort of siloed in their office, in their department, doing their own thing. So this is like an opportunity to be more social. And we get up there and it was just silent. And of course, I'm paranoid, being the new person, being the foreigner in the room, that I somehow like caused this, and that maybe it should be on me to like create the conversation. My American side was coming out real strong, and I was like, oh no, silence, can't handle it. So I turned to my colleague next to me and I said, so how are you doing so far today? And she was like, shrugged. It's Tuesday. It's 9:45. That was it. And I was like, cool, great, okay.
This is going well.
Yep, making so many friends. And I don't think, that's not always how these coffee breaks go, but it is sometimes how they go. And when we do have a conversation, it's not, I don't know. There are people I'm finding out now a year in that they have kids or partners. I don't know anything about them. We don't do small talk. Maybe we can talk about the weather or something in the newspaper or something like this, like more impersonal things that are shared because we live in the same place. Those can be discussed. But the small talk that I'm used to, where you're just sort of chit-chatting, sharing a little bit of personal information, nothing too revealing, just a little chit-chat. That's not really a thing that I experience. I will say, in more informal environments, not at work, out at a bar or something, or hanging out with friends at a party, people are more likely to talk, and it doesn't have to be about things that are very serious, which approaches small talk.
Yeah, it's in that region. I think what the differentiation that you made with people who I consider my friends, it's way easier to make something that resembles small talk, I think. But it's more genuine. It's not just small talk. It's kind of like really asking how are the kids, or how's work going, or so on. So yeah, I guess the only thing that they like to talk about is the weather. Actually, the Germans, they love to talk about the weather, but generally they don't have any problem with silence. And I think I have the same problem as you, Nicole. If there is a silence, I have to fill it. I cannot handle it. It's kind of a disease of mine. If there's a silence that's going on for 5 seconds already, I start getting uncomfortable. And if it reaches 7 seconds, I have to say something. And invariably it's something completely irrelevant or mundane or stupid. Germans are quite happy to sit there in some kind of setting, like before a meeting starts, while you're waiting for everyone to arrive. They're quite happy to just sit there and not say anything. It's not always the case, but yeah, they can just sit in silence and it's no problem. So I guess the problem's with us.
I do like it though. There are some moments where you can tell like they're trying, especially I used to teach English or work in an institute where English was taught. And so some of the students they've heard about this thing called small talk in class. And so they would like to try it on for size. And so they try to make it happen. And it's kind of funny what they choose to say and how they are with their body language and all, because it's like you are trying, and the point of small talk is that you don't try, and it's very casual and relaxed.
Exactly.
But it's not really their thing, the whole casual, relaxed, unplanned thing.
Okay, so we have confirmed Germans do not like small talk. So then Germans hate a draft or a breeze going through an office or in an apartment. This is something that I've read, or I guess the Germans make this joke about themselves. Is this something that you're aware of?
It was not something I knew before moving to Germany. I would say this is a stereotype that they give themselves, and
yes.
It's super true.
It's super true.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. They need to luft all the time. They need to let fresh air into the room. Yes. So they open the window. But if that air becomes a draft, which I think you maybe have to be born and raised in Germany to know where the difference is. But if the air magically transforms itself from a fresh air breeze to a draft, then it's horrible and terrible, and everyone should put on their scarves, shut the window, and drink tea immediately, lest they get a cold. So what? Right away.
Exactly like you said, I am amazed that for people who seem to go on a lot about drafts and say things like "es zieht ein bisschen," which means basically that it's breezy in here, they are anal about airing out the apartments, and they will do it when it's minus 10 degrees outside. They will open all the windows in the apartment, and it'd be like the Siberian chill passing through the apartment. And you're like, what are you guys doing? You hate the breeze. So yeah, I find that very incongruous that they would hate drafts so much, and yet they have no issue airing out a room for 15 minutes and then having it be like a refrigerator in there. Yeah, so that's confirmed. Germans do hate a draft.
Absolutely.
One of this is kind of a two-part one, right? So one of the things that I've gotten a lot on the show, and I think that from what I've heard, you've also discussed it with some of your guests before, is that Germans are difficult to make friends with, is the stereotype. And then the second part of this is that once you do make friends, you're in for life. So how close is this stereotype to truth?
I think this is a really good question. And I feel like so many people do have different experiences with this. Like if you as a newcomer and as a foreigner are moving to Germany or living in Germany in a format where you have a connection already, like if you're moving into the city where your partner already lives and has a network of friends, then it's probably really easy to just become their friends, meet their friends, and become friends with the friends of the friends, you know what I mean? And build a network from there. I think that would probably be fine. I don't think that would be really that challenging at all. But if you're coming in on your own, then I do think it's true. I mean, for me, I found that to be true. I think everyone meets each other at vereins, at clubs. And as someone who at the beginning didn't have money to join a club, and now I'm just looking around at all my interests, like, actually, these are things I like to do because I can do them alone. I don't want to do them with other people. It's been hard to find where I'm supposed to find these friends. It's not at the workplace. It's not, on the train or something. I'm not going to strike up a conversation with my seat partner. None of that would really be appropriate here. So I think it is in some ways hard to make friends with them at first. I guess, do we want to take on that first part? Do you want to respond to that part first?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that a lot of the problems come with how closed the Germans seem to be. When we got here, we experienced the Germans being what we thought were unfriendly. And yet, at the same time, they were always helpful. So if we needed help, they were always there to help us, which was strange for me because in South Africa, one of the things is you kind of ask your friends for help. You don't exactly necessarily go and ask strangers for help. You ask the people that you're friends with. But here, when we moved in the beginning, people were very good at offering us help and getting us set up, but they weren't friends and they were sort of closed from a friendship perspective. So that was very surprising for me and very difficult to get my head around in the beginning. But yeah, I think they're definitely difficult to make friends with. I've had people that I thought we would be friends because we have all the same tastes and everything. And it just never happened for some reason. I don't know why. But I think it's also, like you say, they're meeting people where they meet them in the clubs or whatever hobbies that they're doing or in sport, whatever that they're doing. And it's very difficult to get into those circles. I would say that part is confirmed. Not with all Germans. I've also had Germans where it was from day one. We were friends with, and we're still friends now, like over a decade later. So there is an exception to that. It's obviously not all Germans, as we said up at the top, but it's definitely, in general, difficult to make friends with German.
Right. And then in terms of once you make that friend, you have them for life. I feel like in a strange way, yes. I mean, I have pretty limited experience with German friends. I would say I have a lot of German acquaintances. I know people who have German friends, and I have hung out with them in joint settings multiple times, but we've never taken that next step to become friends ourselves. So I don't really hold them to any kind of standard. But the couple of German friends that I have made where I would have considered them friends, and I think this being the sticking point, they would actually consider me a friend. The one moved away after just a couple months of our friendship, and she still checks in with me now and again My other close German friend was actually my former German teacher, who we became tandem partners. She was practicing her English, I practiced my German, and then that morphed into a friendship. That was also an interesting way to make a friend. And with her too, I think we're not the kind of friends where I feel like we're going to hang out every weekend. We actually really only meet up maybe once a month or so. But
yeah.
I do, from her, also still get the feeling that I'm a part of her life and that she considers me someone who matters. So I haven't had the experience where I have like a really close German friend and how that changes over time. But from having these people who I would consider more distant friends, those distant friendships, I've had similar ones in America. And when you move away or circumstances change, sometimes you drift apart. And whenever you end up in the same place, you're good again, but you don't really do much with it in between. Whereas these friendships here that are on that same level, there is sort of a stronger feeling that they think of me and care for me.
For me, about that second part is that once you make friends with them, you're friends for life. It is in a way, but I think it's not any different to friendships anywhere else. Like when you reach a level of friendship with anyone, you have a connection where you're willing to, like you say, check in with people that you haven't seen for 5 years, or if you live in the same city, you see each other kind of regularly and so on. So I think it's the same in some ways once you reach that point. It's not that there's anything different about being friends with a German for me. It's just that it's a lot harder to get to that point, which means that when a German opens up to you like that, it kind of means a lot more. So yeah, I think I kind of don't fully confirm that second part, but I think it does have more value because they're so difficult to get to be friends with in the first place.
I wonder too if some of it comes back to how you identify or how you define the word friend, right? Like I had people in my life when I lived in Chicago that I would have considered friends because because we were spending a lot of time together or like connected in some way. But in the long term, would I really consider them the same kind of friend as, when I use that word with people who I know we're going to be in each other's lives forever. To me, I use friend equally for both. And sometimes you throw in a best friend in there to help make the other one clearly superior, right? But I think for Germans, it seems more like they're really hesitant to use that word. But once they do, they're serious about it. But I think I see what you're saying, where it's like, well, a friend's a friend. Like they're not going to not be around if you're really a friend. So maybe it has something to do with the definition.
Yeah. I think that's also part of the culture clash, is that the definition of people in their minds of what a friend is different to what maybe the Germans define as friends and acquaintances.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So we have done a great job, Nicole, of confirming or busting these myths. This is the last word in these cliches and stereotypes here on this podcast. There is no other opinion that can be ended to. No, I'm kidding. I would love to hear from other people, their takes on these myths that we've discussed. Nicole, where can people find you and your podcast?
They can find my podcast wherever they're listening to this podcast. Just search for the Expat Cast in your podcast app of choice, and it should pop right on up. It's the nice little logo with the bike. You can also find us on Instagram and on Twitter at the Expat Cast. And I always like to also share my email address, which is theexpatcast@gmail.com, because I think it's fun to have random conversations with other fellow expats or in people interested in expat-y things. So that all of those options are open for you to find more of me.
Thanks, Nicole, for taking the time to come on the show. I really appreciate it, even though you're a rival. It's been great fun chatting to you and discussing these myths and stereotypes about Germany.
It was such a blast. Thank you for having me on. It was really fun to look at the German culture in this way with this, 2 years in perspective. So thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for your show too. No, I shouldn't say that because we're rivals. No, but actually, I think your show is really great, and I just want to thank you for all the hard work that you put into it every week, so that listeners like me, because I'm also a fan, can enjoy it. So thanks to you.
Aw, that's nice. Okay, Nicole, thanks for coming on. We'll chat again sometime.
Bye-bye.